Okay, and we are live once again. Thank you so much for joining in today. Welcome to Career Lounge Live, helping you to be a greater you. This lounge is designed to help middle and high school students to prepare for life after high school. You know what they say, failing to plan is planning to fail. So today's topic, writing your personal logbook. So invite your friends to the Facebook group if you are watching in the Facebook group. If you are already a member, tag them into this live. If you are watching live, hashtag live. If you are watching the replay, hashtag replay in the chat box so we know that you are here with us. So while we wait some others to join, we want to share with you who we are. And we also want to give a special thanks to the Career Lounge Live sponsor, EXL. They are a leading data analytics and digital operations and solutions company. If you want to learn more about EXL, you can go to exlservice.com. So thank you so much to their sponsorship. We are able to bring this lounge to you at no cost. So once again, thank you so much for joining today. Invite your friends, remember, to the Facebook group. If you are watching through YouTube, share this message to them because they're going to have a lot of tools for their future and their career. So remember, if you're watching the replay, hashtag replays. We want to know that you are here with us. So we want to tell you a little bit about our company. Love Our Youth is a 501c3 nonprofit organization providing programs for youth throughout the Central Florida and the whole U.S. These special sessions that we are having, we are spreading the message through all the U.S. So our mission is to encourage the youth to embrace the self-worth and values life lessons in order to maximize their potential. So today, understand that decisions can be made by applying a process and that learning this process is critical to making all important decisions in life. So including those about career choices that are so important. So today we are discussing this topic that is so important. So you're going to learn today how to describe, how to list those information that you should place in your portfolio. And you're going to learn how to describe that. So that will help you to your career planning. But before we kick off today's topic, let's learn a little bit more about our facilitators today. We have Jamila Diggs and we have Vikram Joseph Machado. So I want to let them to introduce themselves, that they can say a little bit about themselves. Why did you choose your career, your current career? Yeah, your missions, your goals, anything that you want to share about your background today with our students. So any one of you that can, the one to start.
Yeah, I'll let Jamila go first.
Okay, so hi, I'm Jamila Diggs. I'm an attorney at EXL in the general counsel's office. And I've been here for about 10 years. And, I started my journey as an attorney, not necessarily as an attorney for EXL. Yeah, I'm not sure what else, you should add here.
Yeah, who you are, your background, that's perfect. So the students know who you are, and they just know you a little bit. So what can you share about you, Vikram?
Sure. So I, didn't plan on being an attorney. I actually started out in journalism, and I worked in film and television for a while. So I worked for NBC, HBO, various other media organizations. I also worked in politics a little bit. And so, I went from there and I ended up in my career as an attorney. And I guess, as we go through this event, and we talk about sort of our journeys and how we've gotten to where we've gotten, and your career path and all of that, I can go into a little bit more detail about my actual journey from journalism to an attorney. But yeah, so I'll let Vikram go now.
Okay, thanks, Jamila. So Jamila is extremely modest. Jamila is our assistant general counsel, right? Jamila classified as an attorney, which is the core role, but she has been invaluable to us just across our spread of business, right? In creating the right contracts that are best for our clients and for our organization and shareholders. Jamila is also a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. So my background is, I started off educationally, an initial profession as an engineer, a gear design engineer. I worked with two of the largest automobile firms in India, which is where I grew up. And at some point I realized that, I didn't really enjoy what I was doing. It sounded more fun than it was. Now, anyways, when you grow up in India, for anybody who's familiar, there are two key, at least in the early 2000s, there were just two key career choices, right? It was like either a doctor or an engineer. If you pick outside that, then good luck. So my sister didn't make it any easier by going to Harvard and graduating top of her class. So at some point I started to feel like I was adopted, right? So I decided, okay, it makes sense. Let me do my engineering. Did my engineering, did well, got into these firms, worked as a gear design engineer. And somewhere along the way, I just realized that, hey, I think I just picked a choice that was out there, but it wasn't something that I genuinely thought through. It seemed like the right thing to do. It seemed like, if I didn't pick that, I wouldn't be quite living up to my potential. But I think over the last 17 odd years that I've been working, I've realized that potential really is your own state of mind and perspective in terms of where you want to get, right? And potential can be leveraged in a variety of ways. So you look at me, I'm somebody who started off as an engineer, worked designing gears, right, for everything from automobiles, electric vehicles, and trucks. And now I'm in insurance, in life and annuities insurance. Sounds very different, sounds less interesting, but I personally enjoy it far more just because of the whole customer journey of somebody that you get to impact, right? So I've been with EXL for 12 years now, right? And worked across 3 different geographies, worked in India, managed our operations in the Philippines for about 8 years, and now I'm based out of New York in a client facing role. So that's a little bit about me, Dali. But happy to take any questions as they go along.
Yeah, and I love that both of you share that, because sometimes we start with something, and that's something that we have talked in the different sessions. And if you haven't watched the previous session, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel so you can watch them all, because every one of them has something valuable for you. So in all the sessions, there's something that always resonates. It is that maybe you will start in a path, and that not necessarily will be your final path, but that definitely it will prepare you or whatever comes in the future. And then Jamila, that was something that you mentioned. I would like to ask you if you can talk a little bit more about that, because you mentioned that you did different stuff that are very opposite of what you're doing right now. If you can share a little bit about that path of yours, why you started, where you started, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I actually started on like a musical theater path. I was going to be an actress and on Broadway. And, I think that a lot of skills so I took like a lot of classes when I was a kid, and, acted in various musicals and whatnot. And I feel like those skills did prepare me for my current career. But from there, I ended up, going to college and deciding that I wanted to be a journalist. And, you know, I think one of the big things when you're deciding your career is, I mean, you don't really know what you want to do until you actually sort of get your feet wet and, you know, sort of hit the ground running. So, you know, I realized that acting wasn't for me. I realized that journalism wasn't for me. I ended up in politics for a while. I worked for the New York City Council, and I was chief of staff to city councilman here in New York. And then I decided from there that the next natural step was law school. And then I ended up sort of on the road that I am now. But I went down a number of different paths. And I think that that's important, you know, as you're trying to navigate what you want to do, because what you want to do is going to be what you're going to do essentially for the rest of your life, I guess. So, you know, I went down a number of different paths, and then I ended up sort of where I am now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because you know, maybe that will happen to you, to your student that are watching. Maybe you say like, this is what I want to do, and then maybe you end up doing something else, and that's okay, because like she mentioned, like Jamila mentioned, that is going to prepare you for your future journey. So today I want to jump in the topic of today, which is writing your personal logbook. And I'm going to share my screen in just a second with you guys. Let me go here really quick so I can share my screen with you. Perfect. Here we go. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
You sure can.
Awesome. So today our topic for today is writing your personal logbook. And you may say, what is a logbook? Well, basically it's kind of like a resume, but with everything else that you are doing within middle school and high school that is going to equip you or prepare you to make that choice and to go into college and that career that you're going to choose. So the objectives of this session, it will be at the end of this session, you will be able to list and describe the kinds of information you should place in your portfolio, meaning this is what I need to do. Maybe not all of them are going to apply to you, but it will give you an idea of what you're supposed to be looking to it. And you will be able to describe how to use it in order to assist you in that career planning. So kind of like a roadmap. It will help you in that journey, and it will also help that career planning. So if you want to jump in, Jamila, with the career portfolio.
I'm sorry, to jump in to that. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to jump in with the with the slide.
Oh, I don't have a slide.
You
No,
can
with the
see it.
slide that she's presenting. Yeah, with the slide that she's presenting, the personal profile assessment.
Can you
result.
see it on your end?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So
So
what
so
I start
basically
off, since I can see it.
yeah, if you want to
I'll-
jump in,
Yeah,
any of you.
I'll jump in here. So I think the first bit on your personal profile is everything is about, you know, this is an oft-used term called storyboarding. I think you need to decide what is the right narrative that you want to present, whether it is to a future college, to a future employer, right? Because people aren't going to get to know you for who you are. They're going to get to know you for what you've written about yourself and how you've created that narrative. So the first thing is being eloquent in your brevity, right? Being succinct and concise, but also being factual. So when you're creating this personal profile, I think you've got to, for me, and I'll tell you this, right? So in my current role, I'm a growth leader with the organization. and also the head of our individual markets. But in my previous role, I used to head operations for our geographies in the Philippines and South Africa. And one thing I came across a lot were people's profiles, right? And after a while, it all starts looking the same, because everyone talks about dedication. Everyone talks about being focused. Everyone talks about, certain certifications they have. But there's nothing that really distinguishes that resume from anything else. So I think the first thing that you need to know about yourself is, what is it that you're trying to convey? And I think confidence in a conversation, and confidence even in how you write your personal profile, right, is very, very important. So I would suggest, most people go online, look for the right things, and that becomes very, very cliched almost. I would suggest taking a step back and writing you, not as an Instagram profile, but as you. What do you think you bring to the table, right? And I think that is something that you can't do in 10 or 15 minutes. You really got to spend some time to understand what you want to convey, right? So that's the first bit on your personal profile. I think your personal profile also needs to be, before you write a profile, or before you're looking at a particular school, or before you're looking at a particular employer, I think it's important to take a step back, right? And look at what is your eventual goal. Now, like Dali mentioned, like Jamila mentioned, like I mentioned, there are many roads which lead to Rome, right? And everybody's version of Rome differs. For me, when I thought of working, so I never came from a background where, hey, I had to plan how I paid for my education. So for me, it was more about, what did I want out of life, right? And working towards that. So for what I wanted out of life was being able to travel, right? Being able to make financial decisions without consideration of, hey, can I really do this right now? Do I need to wait a little longer? So it was the right role for a means to an end. And that's what put me in engineering first, because I said, okay, sounds like a career that will eventually pay a lot and, give you status and all of that. But I think along the way, what I realized was, what you need to be looking at is more about what is your USP, what you enjoy doing, all right? Everybody's not a people's person. Everybody's not a numbers person. So I think the first bit that you got to classify is, what area appeals to you the most. If it's people, great. Then there are various sections within that, right? You could go into operations in a firm, right? And this is macro, right? Then in what type of firm, what industry is one step down. The first bit, like I said, if it's people, then okay, then you know that sales is an option, then marketing is an option. Then, and especially now, then you look at your secondary skill set, people plus creativity, right? If you feel that you're creative, then great, then marketing is something that you can do, right? If sales, if you're exceedingly confident and you feel that, hey, even in your friends group, you're an influencer, then sales is for you, right? Because sales is all about influencing what people think the potential outcome could be, right? So I think that is step one before even writing your personal profile. If you get to this first without knowing where you want to be, I think you'll end up with something that's fairly generic. Now, if you realize, hey, okay, maybe I'm not a people's person, not just yet, right? And that's not an absolute, that's a for now, that's a point in time. And maybe at the moment, I'm more comfortable with numbers. Okay, then I look at stuff that's more statistics based, that's more analytics, right? And those are equally powerful, because if you look at everything today and the Internet of Things, right, which is, to break it down, everything from your smart watch to your Apple phone, to your apps, to your smart cookers, everything that gives a signal back to an organization to let it know how customers behave, right? Data at the moment is probably the most powerful thing there is apart from people, right? Because data is determining decisions. Data is determining how companies market to people, right? Of course, the final closing of that loop is a human being. So I think first determine and decide where your areas of comfort are, right? And then start to hone in. And then remember that everybody plays better when you keep score. And that is exactly what today's session is about, right? It's not just about, because talk is cheap. At the end of the day, everyone can claim to do everything or do it well. But your personal profile is then going to be backed by, hey, how is your academic profile? How are your assessment results? Now, I will tell you this, you do not always necessarily have to be the brightest in your class. That is not the only determinant of success. It is one, it's a potential determinant, right? But the second bit is, if you feel, hey, you know what, I'm not one of the brightest, and that's the way it is, right? I'm great at other things, but academics, I'm going to bring so much to the table, and this is honestly where it's going to be, right? Then you look at what else you can develop, because trust me, when you go to an interview, if you make it to an interview, people aren't looking only at your academics, right? They're looking at you. They're looking at how you sell yourself, how your confidence, what your thought is, whether you'll be easy to work with, whether you have Gen Z or millennial syndrome, which is, hey, are you expecting things to come easier to you rather than working towards it, right? So I'd say, a lot of times when I've spoken to groups in the past, there are some folks who are a little concerned about, hey, their educational prowess, that, hey, academics, math is not really for me. I'm struggling to get the right, the highest average in my class. That is a great to have, but there are many strengths that you bring to the table. So there are many arrows in your quiver. You just need to identify horses for courses. So that's on the assessment results. I think the career goals, and I'll stop at career goals, and I'll let Jamila take the educational plans and schools and whatever else she has to add on to the beginning. I think from a career goals perspective, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, identifying what really makes you tick, right? What excites you. Now, if you look at me, what really excites me, incredibly boring to most people, is history, right? If I could do one thing and not think of financials or anything else, I'd be teaching history somewhere, right? Whether it was medieval history, World War, whatever, I would enjoy doing that. Second most interesting goal would have been archaeology. See, I'm tremendously boring, right? But that's me, right? But eventually you look at means to an end, and you don't always make a choice of what you love the most. And that's why when folks say, I don't completely subscribe to folks saying, hey, do what you love, because sometimes doing what you love doesn't pay the bills. But look at elements of what you love, and if you can find that in a role. So I love interacting with people. And for me, operations was that avenue to learn from them and to hopefully impart to them, right? So don't think of your career or the line that you're choosing as an absolute. Think of it as hey, what really gets you going, what makes you tick, and what fields have slivers of that or chunks of that, right? So that's from a career goals perspective. I would also say, when you're choosing your career goal, also think about where you'd like to end up. And I did this honestly at 24, right? Where I was thinking about, hey, where do I want to end up when I'm 40, right? Where do I want to end up financially? Where do I want to end up in my career? And I actually plotted it, and I'm not even joking, till today, right? I keep updating that. So some goals you meet a little sooner, because when you make, they talk about, very cliched term, they talk about SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound. Honestly, a truer model was never created. If you don't apply these to your goals, as basic as it is, if you're not specific about, it doesn't have to be, hey, I want to be an engineer or I want to be a lawyer. But if you're not specific about what makes you tick, because there are going to be a lot of good days and a fair number of bad days, right? And the bad days are important because you never know the good days without the bad days, right? But knowing what makes you tick will help you get through those harder conversations, those harder days. So taking a step back and getting that in your career, knowing, hey, by what point, so measurable, right? Knowing, now that's the second step, which is, hey, okay, I know I'm a people's person. Now, how do I put it into a career? Do I want to do sales? Do I want to do marketing? Do I want to do operations? Do I want to do education, right? That's where the secondary skill sets comes in, and you try to evaluate that to make it more measurable. Then you look at your timelines, right? And which is time bound. I'm going straight to the end of the SMART goals. That, hey, by 40 or by 35 or by 30 or by 25, I want to have my own car. I want to be putting a down payment on a house. So a lot of times, at least, and this is a very personal thing to different people. For me, my career started off being a means to an end, right? But somewhere along the way, it became about the people I was working with. And that's what's kept me 12 years in the same firm, because I enjoy the people I'm working with. So I'll take a pause there, because I don't want this to be a monologue, and I would love to hear from Jamila as well. But that's just a flavor of how I would plan, take a step back, look at what really excites me, what gets me going, and then create my profile based on that. So it's more indicative in that direction and not generic. Looking at what sort of assessments or examinations or courses or certifications would enable me towards that. And that maybe, all of this is continuously evolving. It's just a point in time. If you do today, it could change a little bit tomorrow. And then your career goals, right? Which is closely tied into the step before your personal profile, which is, hey, who am I? What gets me going? So that's my take up to there, and I'll pause. And hopefully, Dali, this hopefully makes some sense.
It does, definitely does make sense. And you did a couple questions that I want to recap on that. You said, like, what distinguishes you, what you bring to the table, those things that you need to think about, what are your strengths, and that not necessarily what you're passionate about is going to be your career, but some of those strengths can be part of what you do. Like Vikram likes to, be with people, talk to people. But then, there's a lot of careers that will allow you to do that while you make money. So those are very, very important questions that you need to be asking yourself today in order to choose that path, before you start, compiling all this portfolio, like, where am I going to go? What do I want to do? What am I going to bring to the table in that career? So definitely is very, very important to ask ourselves those questions. And like you said, I think those questions we continually ask, ourselves during our journey, during our career. Okay, you start a job. Okay, what am I bringing to the table? What are my strengths? Where can I, be a strength to someone that maybe doesn't have what I have, and so forth. So that was very, very good. So moving forward, like, what can you share with us, Jamila, about, education plans, schools, financial aid sources, and all that? Why is it important to have that as well in the portfolio? What you think it will be, very, very important, those questions that we need to be asking ourselves in order to have that.
Sure. So I agree completely with what Vikram said. And actually, the part about, just trying to figure out what your sort of general passion is key. Like for me, it was, I love history too. I'm a bit of a nerd there. But then also like writing, English was, more of my reading, I was super into that. And so, my whole career path has been down that kind of line, right? Like I've, gone into journalism, gone on to be an attorney and all that, but it was all down that sort of career path. Like I'm not a math and science person. My sister is, and she's a doctor. So that makes like perfect sense. But yeah, so just sort of figuring out what your base is. And then I think that based on that, that's how you determine your educational plans. So I will say for educational plans, I went to law school a little bit late. By the time I got there, it was, before I went to NYU for undergrad. I went to Georgetown for law school. But by the time when I went to NYU, the big thing was, you have to have like the top undergrad school. By the time I went to Georgetown for law school, the big thing was you had to have the top sort of secondary school, either med school, law school, business school, whatever your secondary degree is going to be. And I think that, with the rising costs of education in the US, like a lot of the focus for educational plans is now on the secondary part and not so much on the initial undergrad. So, when I went to law school, I went to Georgetown, there were a lot of kids that went there and they came from community college, or they came from, not like top tier level schools. And so I think that when you're thinking about your educational plans, first, one important thing, at least for here, is you have to think about like how much all this is going to cost. If you're going to pay, a ton of money for your undergrad degree and your secondary degree. And I think that, now the educational market is moving towards more that your secondary degree is more important. And then, for schools and this all like ties into schools, financial aid sources, all of that. So I think that, you can't not think about the cost when you're thinking about your educational plans, but obviously, you'd want to try and go to the best schools possible. I also think though that, in this day and age, I'm not sure that educational plans are as important as they were, when I was coming up, because you have social media, you have other places where people are getting experience and they're, developing, and they're, things like doing videos on TikTok or, videos on Instagram. So, while schools are important, I think that, it's one of those areas where it's like a changing landscape in the US. So, and I think that a lot of it, honestly, has to come down to cost. So I think that's important. And then for financial aid sources, I would say, everything is financial aid source. Like when I was going to college, there were lots of scholarship opportunities. It was, like a scholarship for $1,000, scholarship for $5,000, things like that. I applied to all of them. So for financial aid sources, I would say, think outside the box. Like, don't just go with like the FAFSA, government financial aid sources. There's lots of different financial aid sources that, you can avail yourself to. And, there's lots of different like nonprofits and things like that that are offering, $2,000 here, $1,000 there. And, it sounds like a small amount in, the individual sense, but it all adds up if you apply to everything. And usually like the application process is like, filling out a page or two, and then providing your providing your school records and things like that. So it's not like typically that hard to do, but that money adds up. And then for job seeking tools, I would say that this is an area where your secondary school your schools in general, depending on where you go, will generally like help with this. One of the benefits of going to highly reputable schools is that you have an alumni network that's available to you. And you can, they send their companies there to recruit people for jobs and whatnot. So, I think a big job seeking tool will be your school. But then beyond that, LinkedIn, that's like a place that everyone's going to look for jobs. Depending on what you want to do, there's other social media sites like Instagram, Twitter, that are sort of feeding into, people are looking for people from there. So I think there's a good amount of job seeking tools, but the main one, I think, at least for me, and this is all like very industry specific, right? So at least for me, the main job seeking tool is like my school, right? But, there's other industries where the job seeking tool is, a variety of social media sites. So yeah, so.
If I can just add on there, Jamila, I think just a couple of things from my perspective. I think when you're, Jamila is very right. The world is far, and the whole, the whole evolution of social networks has changed the job market and changed what all you can do, right? When we were young, probably in the early 2000s, if anyone said, hey, make playing games online a career, we'd have laughed them out of there, right?
Yeah.
But it is a career today. Making TikTok videos, doing dance moves, is that a career? Yes, it is today. Back in the day, we'd have been like, heck no, right? But also the other bit to consider, being a YouTuber, being a TikToker, being an online video game specialist, an online gaming specialist, right? I think the one thing you need to keep in mind, because these sound like great, anything that makes you not study when you're at a certain age sounds like a great career option, right? But you have to also remember one thing. If it was that simple, everybody'd be doing it. And you have to look at penetration rates, right? So penetration is extremely important in a career. If you're going to do something really niche, then you're going to have to be, because it's a pyramid, right? It's very narrow at the point you want to get to. So if you want to be a gamer who's making money, you're probably going to have to be phenomenal at it to make the kind of money you want to. If you want to be, a TikToker, then great, you better be creative as heck, because that's what's going to get you to 1 million and 2 million views and pay the bills continuously. Because what you have to also think about is life in general. It's not just about making money. It's about, hey, if you want to buy a house, a bank's going to come and look not at the fact that you're making 200 grand today in this month and 50 in the next month, and there are slow months. You're not going to get credit based on that. So you need to be able to think also about, hey, what are your means to an end? And I'm not saying there's one definitive answer. I'm saying if you feel that something is for you, great, but just don't take the path of least resistance because it doesn't involve a school or it doesn't involve paying for a school. Remember the one thing, and I think that's where Jamila was going as well. The one thing that a school will bring you is pedigree if it's a good school, right? And that pedigree will never, ever, ever go away, right?
So yeah, so I'm not anti-school.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not. Jamila, given the fact that you did law school when you did as well, I'm 100% not. But I know that when I was this age, anything that was about not studying and doing stuff that was more practical sounded great. I nearly went to Israel to build houses because that sounded like a good idea at that point, right? But I think the point I'm making is that, and it's very close to the point you were making, that, hey, one of the greatest tools for you was your school and your alumni, right? Because they are incentivized to make sure that you do well, that you're placed well, because that's how the circle for them and the cycle for them continues. So I think from that perspective, just making sure, and I'll tell you this. Sometimes when you're on a journey, people say it's important to have a plan B. But I will tell you, in my own personal experience, what's equally important is how committed you are to plan A, right? Because if you always have a plan B, you'll always switch to something else before really going down that hard, long road, less traveled, and probably getting an outcome at the end of it, right? The other bit I'll just say is, when you look at a school, to get into a good school, it's more than just about your academics nowadays, right? There are enablers and accelerators around that, which means, hey, what else have you done? Great. If Miss Harris, like on this call, is great in academics, okay, there are 3 other people who are also great at academics. So what is your USP, right? So have you done theater, right? Like Jamila has. Have you written articles? Have you spent time doing social work, right? A lot of kids nowadays in the New York area, believe it or not, have started these little websites, to fund certain initiatives, right? One, definitely out of their parents raising them right. And 2, also knowing that, hey, having a broader perspective to how you're impacting society around you as well is key for some of these colleges to look at, hey, what type of person will you turn out to be and how impactful could you be beyond just education? So I think that's one bit. And then, one bit that I was told when I was in engineering by a professor of ours, and he was part of our civil engineering class, and he said, hey, and I'll tell you why we got told this, because it was probably the first and last time I taught a class right? And I went out to play. We were playing basketball, and he came to the court and he said, "Okay, you guys." And he was late, so we thought it wasn't happening. We didn't wait more than 10 minutes, and we went out. And he came out and he called us all back and he said, "Listen, guys, you have 4 years in engineering college, right? And in my mind, it's a 4:40 equation. You really work hard for these 4 years, and you'll enjoy the next 40, right? But you take it easy right now, and you're going to be playing catch up. Now, it's not as absolute as he made it out to be. But if you are spending time doing something, you might as well do it well, right?" So I'll just pause there. Jamila, I thought you were looking to add something else. You looked like you were going to add something else. So back to you.
Oh no. So I was just going to agree about the schools portion. What you talked about. I mean, look, going to a great school is just invaluable. There's lots of benefits to it. But I think that if that's not, something that is doable for whatever reason, right? Like there's still other paths that can lead you to your eventual goal. And like we said before, like your eventual goal may not be, I want to be, like, I did not know I wanted to be a lawyer, right? Like I took a meandering sort of path to that goal. Some people do. But, you can craft your educational plans in a way now that will not, it should not, and you could go a more unconventional path, right, than our paths, and still sort of make it to your end goal. So that was my only point there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I would just add, like, if you choose like unconventional path, like let's say a YouTuber and all that you guys were mentioning, remember, if you want to be like the best and have millions, you will need to learn how to market. You will need to learn how to brand. You will need to learn how to edit. You will need to learn how to, buy the best camera and all that. You will learn how? Studying. You will need to, take certifications, courses, and all that. Because if you really want to monetize, through that, you will need to learn. So eventually, any path that you choose, you need to learn. You need to read, and you need to have someone that educates you in order to be the best. Because if you're playing around and you don't learn, then you're not gonna conquer what you really want to do. So I just want to add that even though you don't choose like the college path, anything that you want to do, eventually you will need to sit down and you will need to learn from somebody else that already made it. So that's very important. It doesn't matter which path you choose, you will need to learn something about that. Okay. For sure. Okay. So basically here we're gonna, is like what we've been talking about, the assessment, some examples of what is that, for example, the SAT, the ACT, the occupations, whatever occupation like you wanna pursue, either is, the regular college path or something more unconventional, like being a YouTuber, I don't know, a TikToker or something like that. What's your educational plans and grade? What major? What classes do you need? Requisites and all that. If you're in honor society, clubs, awards, anything that you can compile and put inside there, like that's your resume, but more like, let's say, evidence-based, if you will. Like if you have a certificate of something, an award that you won and all that, you want it inside of there. So what you're bringing to the table, that goes back to what Vikram said at the beginning, what is that you're bringing to the table? And I don't know if you guys want to add something else in this part.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that as far as resume goes, for your assessment results, I would say don't be very detailed, right? Like, I mean, you can say that you've passed whatever, but like you wouldn't put, don't believe you would put the actual, like your score. And then for educational plans, I think once you're in the college stage, it's just your major. And then as far as, the classes that are needed, that'll be what you need to achieve your major, but typically that wouldn't go on your resume. What I think is very important is like experience. So, when I was in college, like, doing internships, things like that was, and putting that sort of experience on your resume was sort of the big thing. Because places are going to be looking at, well, yes, obviously you're a good student, you've gotten good grades, you've gone to a good school, so on and so forth, but what have you actually done in the real world? So, I think one, and I don't know if this is going to be covered on a separate slide, but I think like one area that's really important and is really going to build your career portfolio is that experience. Going to like summer programs, internships, things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid. Obviously, we would love for it to be paid.
Which most of them are not paid, but
right.
if you find one that is paid, like just take it.
I mean, but if you have the opportunity to find one, well, if you have the opportunity to find one that's paid, that's great. Mm-hmm. But if you don't, even unpaid, and if you can figure out a way to make it work, if you have to make money some other way, I think that the experience part is super important. And I don't know if it's with you.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think, what I used to tell folks as well on my teams, that a lot of your experience is, a lot of your learnings are experiential, but you're not going to experience everything, right? So you have to be putting yourself in situations. That's why you have to be, I think, just being aware. So like Jamila mentioned, right? Going and doing an internship, but being aware, not just checking the box, right? Not just doing what you're doing, but being aware of what's happening around you. So when you're, for example, right, if you're working in a certain role and you see somebody getting coaching and feedback, or somebody else talking about how they've developed, be aware to that, because you don't want to learn everything the hard way. You don't want to learn everything through missteps, right? You want to keep your eyes and ears open and look at how people around you are learning and learn through some of that. I think for me, when you get into a job, or when you get into an internship, there are two paths that you can take. One is you can look at the people who are doing it really well and aspire towards, or you can look at people who it's not the biggest priority for, and it's just a temporary means to an end, and you can settle for, right? And you have to be very, very careful, because it's so much easier to settle for, because sometimes the benchmark of performance, right, what they call right now quiet quitting, right? That's this whole term on LinkedIn and social media, where people are doing exactly what is expected of them, not an inch more, sometimes an inch less, right? But that's one way to make sure that you're always in the middle of the food chain, right? If you are going to just do what you're going to have to think. So for example, if you're working with somebody, right, and they say, hey, Dali, I need this report on the 3rd of this month, can you share it with me? Great. If I were you, I would put an alarm on my calendar for the next month on the 2nd and produce it, just because what do people like? People like people who are proactive and dependable, and people who can make their lives easier. And it's not just a corporate thing, right? In our lives as well, we like anything that makes our lives easier and that's dependable and not going to break down, right? If it's an object or whatever. So I think just being proactive is half the battle won. I think the second bit, like I was mentioning, and talking about what Jamila was saying as well, is you have to invest in yourself, right? Which means that one thing that I started doing fairly late was taking half an hour out of my day and just using it in something that I believe was an investment. An investment wasn't watching Netflix, right? Not necessarily. It could be, depending on what you're watching, right? But for me, my investment, and like Jamila, I'm an avid, voracious reader. I absolutely love it because it almost transports me into a different world, right? And I think it enables one of the most important facets in your career nowadays, which is communication, right? You learn humor, you learn elements of humor if you're reading the right kind of authors, right? You learn, you learn perspective on politics if you're reading on that. The amount of stuff you subconsciously even imbibe, and these don't have to be boring books, these can be fiction, right? But you imbibe a lot of it without even realizing, right? And sometimes at some point you'll surprise yourself with a point you make and you'll be like, hey, where did that come from, right? You'll be pleasantly surprised by something that you've picked up without even realizing. But just investing in yourself is key, because remember, all of this career portfolio is going to be like an enabler to get you into the door. But you're still going to have that interview. You're still going to have that conversation with somebody. And at that point, all of this takes a backseat because that's already taken for granted. That's why you're there, right? But then it's going to be you, your personality, your awareness, what you know, right? And that's why it's so important, whether it's spending 15, 20, 30 minutes just reading up on what's going on in the world, right? Whether it's CNN, Fox News, I know that's a debate nowadays, but pick the channel of your choice and get perspective, right? Or if it's something as simple as investing in yourself by learning a different, like Jamila said, right? Or Dali said, just having a certification never hurts you. If you think, hey, something that you're not strongest at is data, then take a course on data, take a course on analytics. Sometimes it's not that you're not good at it. It's just that you've not been exposed to it, right? It's funny. One of the reasons I don't eat certain vegetables right now, even at this age, is because when growing up, I think my grandmom had many talents, but vegetables and cooking, that wasn't one of them. And what you perceive at that age is what you take away, right? Because you've not been exposed to a certain side of it. So similarly with data, with numbers, with people, it's just exposure. So I would say that this last bit here, clubs, honor societies, awards, is very important as well. But just being able to have a conversation, to be comfortable in your skin, right, to be able to interact seamlessly, that is going to be key, right? Because nervousness and being uncomfortable is part of everybody, right? But just being, like in this conversation, having this conversation, folks could be nervous, but you do it often enough and you're comfortable sharing your perspective because nobody knows your perspective better than you, right? And and that's why everything at the end of the day is confidence led, right? And confidence comes by empowering yourself, by spending time on yourself, by enabling yourself, right? So before this sounds like a Paulo Coelho novel, I'm gonna stop there, right? And Dali, maybe we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah, definitely. And I will add to that, and I'll just give an example where I live, Orange County in Florida. They have a program that is called dual enrollment. So what happened with that? So for students that are in 11th and 12th grade, they can enroll in a technical college, and they have a lot of options there. And guess what? The county is going to pay for that. So you don't have to pay it. So then you have that experience, and then you get to experience that you want to pursue. And maybe you like it, maybe you don't. And if you like it, then you will get out of there with a certification, and it will give you that exposure that Vikram is talking about. So definitely get with your counselor in your school and, look for those opportunities, for internships or dual enrollment if they have it, whatever that can get you out there to experience that career or that, passion that you have. So we already have, I don't know, like 2 more minutes or 3 more minutes, but we want to, get through this final slide, which is, what you're gonna get in your portfolio: favorite school, majors and scholarship, the cover letter, favorite companies and job. Basically doing that research, what we have said, expose yourself out there, do the research, talk to people. Don't just go to Google, go out there, talk to your counselor, talk to professionals. Maybe if you want to be a lawyer, maybe you want to talk to Jamila, hey, then you contact us, send us an email, we can put you in contact with her. They're here for you to answer your questions, and then don't just be behind, your phone or the computer. Just get out there, do the research, because you will be amazed all the opportunities that definitely are out there for you. And any final thoughts that you guys want to bring to the table before we hop off of this session today?
I'll just say another avenue for me is also finding out seniors who've made their path. And the best way to do that is to find out from your teachers. Teachers always keep an eye on some folks who've made it and who are doing well, and finding out what their journey has been like, right? Because you want to see what life is going to be like potentially for you 10 years down the line. So somebody who's taken a similar path, just understanding what that path was. But really, I'll tell you this, that there are no free lunches, right? And the path of least resistance is often the path with the least outcomes as well. So focus on what you really want, focus on what the next, it's so difficult to think about 15 years down the line when you're 15 itself, right? But focus about what's important to you, right? And work that way, because all this time that passes, it's not coming back, right? So if you can use it well and enable yourself, that's the difference between people. It's just the hunger, honestly. People who achieve what they want, it's very often not intellect, right? It's circumstances, sometimes it's opportunities. But when you have enough hunger, you will knock on every door till you find an opportunity. You will chase down alumni till somebody's willing to talk to you. You will chase down, and at that point, being awkward, being embarrassed, oh, am I bothering them? No, you are your own numero uno. And if you don't invest in yourself and you're not willing to go the extra mile, no one else is going to do it for you. So that's really my parting message.
And I don't have quite eloquent parting words, but I did want to touch on something that you said, Dali, about preparing and doing your research and really looking into companies that you want to work for, whatever you want to do. So I'm a big fan of that. Actually, when I was in law school, I had a spreadsheet, and I had my spreadsheet that said, it ranked my law firms that I wanted to work at. And, I had like a little scorecard that I made up and all of that. But I think that is very important, because you want to make sure that, first, I think that you want to make sure that wherever you're working, typically as your first job, right? Like you don't want to move around a ton. So, having a job is like, it's a bit of a marriage, right? Like, yes, like you have the company, it pays you, whatever, but you want to have something that's also satisfying to you. So doing that research, picking a place that you really enjoy, that excites you is important, because it could be, years of your life, not your whole life, potentially, but years of your life, right? And then yeah, so I think that's super important to make sure that you do that, and then sort of kind of see where it goes from there. And then as far as like overall parting words, I would say, there's a lot of options out there. There's, it's important to go to a good school. It's important to do all these things, but the world has come to a point where there's a lot of options. So, you shouldn't feel sort of pigeonholed into one thing, right? You can probably still get to your goal, by going various paths. And, I think that's important to remember.
Yes, definitely. And I love spreadsheets.
Yes.
I love spreadsheets, so I'm a fan of that. I'm very organized in that, so I agree with it.
Yeah.
Have your spreadsheet, have do your research, go out there, definitely. And so final thoughts of what you guys mentioned before, like, know what you're going to bring to the table. You got to know yourself in order to go out there and pursue what you want to do. We talked about how much it's going to cost. That's important, because maybe we have big dreams, and with those big dreams, we got to get big money to pay for that. So that's very, very important. Get your network for jobs, the alumni network, very important. Talk to people. People is going to get you places, okay? Because someone knows someone and knows someone. So don't be shy. Talk to people, talk to your professors, your teachers. All the facilitators from EXLs are available for you. If you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be in the insurance area, anything, or even though it's not that area, they're there for you to answer your questions. So use your resources, because there's a lot of resources out there. So thank you so much, Vikram and Jamila, for being here with me today, sharing with the students this topic and these valuable lessons for them today. So next Career Lounge Live will be on March 21st. That will be next Tuesday at 6 p.m. and the topic will be planning for getting a job. So after, you get that career, then what's next? Okay, so remember, invite a youth, share this video with middle schooler, high schoolers, so they can start planning. Okay, because that is very important. We need to plan. So special thanks to Career Lounge Live sponsor EXL, a leading data analytics and digital operations and solutions company. If you want to learn more about EXL, just go to exlservice.com, exlservice.com. Thank you again to EXL for your sponsorship in this Career Live Lounge. Because of you, we are able to bring this lounge to all of our youth at no cost. So once again, thank you so much for being here today, Vikram and Jamila, and one of the students that connect today. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're watching the replay, make sure you put in the chat box replay and share this content. Information is valuable and we need to share it with other people. So see you guys in the next session.
Cheers. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.